Good morning, Joe here, Lever & Son Pianos, 150 Paynham Road, Evandale, South Australia. Just thought we'd do a small video this morning, just highlighting some of the process involved in restoring and refurbishing some of our vintage Japanese Yamaha and Kawai pianos. Now, by vintage, I mean with Japanese pianos, predominantly 1970s, 80s, early 90s. So if you've ever looked on our website or purchased a piano from us or be looking to purchase a piano from us, you might wonder what is involved in that process. So this morning, we're just going to go through a little bit of what we do behind the scenes. So come through to our workshop. Okay, so here we are in our workshop, and the piano that we're currently working on is a early 1970s Yamaha C3B grand piano, right on the cusp of baby grand and grand. A baby grand is typically thought of as under 6 foot. This one's just over 186 centimeters. So the first aspect of what we do when we refurbish pianos is all the aesthetic side of things. So the first part of that would be the exterior paintwork. So as you can see, Trent's polishing that side of the piano at the moment. So the process with regards to that is, first of all, cleaning, just water and detergent, basically cleaning all the old grime off it is the first step. The second step would be all the parts that come off. So a grand piano initially is put on its side and all the legs come off individually, and the pedal lyre, which is that section there, which has still got to do. So it's placed on its side, all the legs and lyre come off, and we do those first, just so we're not crawling around on the floor. Second part would be the actual bodywork of the piano, so the main part, main structural part of the cabinet. And the process there is, with any of this, is we use 3 products. We use predominantly auto products actually for this finish. Any small marks or scratches or anything like that, like you can see on this side here, there's a few little sort of nicks and dents. What we use there is a cutting compound. So it's a polish, same as this, but it's got a cutting compound in it. It's got fine grains of sand, and what that does, it acts as an abrasive when you rub it. So it takes a little bit of the finish off and takes out those marks and scratches. And then we go over it with this polish, which polishes it even more, takes those little marks out that we've put on with the cut and polish. And then we actually finish it off with this product here with 3M, which is a hand glaze, which is actually meant for fiberglass boats, but works really well with pianos. We also, right at the end of the process, use the buff with the polish. So that's a high-speed buff, which puts a real shine on it. That's the music desk, which we haven't done yet. The full board bit that goes down over the keys, we've done that bit. And then you've got other little bits and pieces like the lid that we do separately, and the cheeks, little parts that go in either side of the keyboard. The brass work and hardware. So we're in the middle of detailing inside, and that's most of that is polishing up all the steel work, strings, what's called the brass A-graphs. And then you've got all the brass work, so pedals, hinges, locks, anything that's made of brass. So we polish all that up as well. That's about it. Okay, so the next part of the process, which we'll talk about with regards to refurbishing a piano, is the keyboard. So that's a large part of the process, obviously. That is what is called a key bed. So that slides into that section of the piano, and the piano, the action or mechanism, which is that bit there, which Dan's working on, attaches to the top of the key bed. So we're talking specifically about the key bed now and what we might do to that. So there are 3 distinct felts which we may or may not replace, or we might replace some ones that are worn. So the first felt is the front rail felt, which is that there. You rarely have to replace them in a Yamaha. They're not old enough, unless they've been eaten by insects or something like that. You don't have to replace them. Front rail felts come in about 8 different sizes, ranging from 3mm right up to 8mm. So you can see the difference in size. And obviously you just put the applicable one on. So for this piano, that would be roughly about 6mm. So if you look at that, that's roughly about right size. So, and obviously they compress over time, so you might put one size up, but you work that out in the process. The next section is the middle rail. That is called the balance rail. So the balance rail is made up of a small felt washer and some paper washers, and that determines the level and height of the key at the front, which you see. So the higher or lower the key is as it sits, if you ever see a piano and there's a low key, all it is taking that key out and putting one paper washer or two under the balance rail. Balance rail comprises of different felts like these ones. So we've got these different felts here, ranging from thin to medium to thick. So there's about 8 different sizes, and we've also got paper washers. They're actually quite thick cardboard washers. But all the paper washers, these ones here, and they range in size from 0.07 of a mil, so basically a piece of paper, right up to 0.75 of a mil, so 3/4 of a mil, and everything in between. So that's what we use for the front rail and balance rail of the keyboard. And the last piece of felt is the back felt, which you also really have to replace as well on Yamahas. Again, I think they must have treated it at that time with sort of insect or rodent repelling stuff, because you rarely see them eaten. Not on a Yamaha. Older pianos you do, rarely on a Yamaha. So that is the keyboard felt. And then obviously you've got the key. So the actual key itself is made up of the main part of the key, the wooden key. There's a felt at the back check, and also the capstan screw here, the key top. So sometimes we have to replace the key tops, which we are actually doing on this piano. So we're going to be replacing all the key tops. There's a couple of chips, a couple of ones with cracks and things. So we're just going to take them all off and replace them. That's about it for the keyboard. Okay, third aspect of a refurbishment that we'll talk about today is the main part, the most complicated part, and that is the piano action assembly. A grand piano action is made up of 2 components. The action assembly sits on top of the key bed once everything's restored in relation to the key bed, which we've just spoke about. And this is basically, you can look at this as the motor of the piano. So it has all the moving parts, 90% of the moving parts. A grand piano action is made up primarily of 2 components. The first component is the hammer assembly. So that is the hammer assembly. So things we might check on that would be the actual wear on the hammers, and whether we actually replace the hammers. Again, rarely have to on Yamahas. It's a process of reshaping those, which Dan is actually doing at the moment. He's just stepped out because he's camera shy. So we're reshaping the hammer heads on these, and that is a process of using sandpaper files ranging from coarse to get the shape down to, which is 150 grit, down to 240 grit, to sort of refine the shape even more. And then we actually finish them off with 1500. The less coarse you use, the more bright the piano. So you can determine really the tone of the piano by the coarseness of the paper you use in that process. We like to finish it off with 1500, make them really nice and smooth, and and just see where they are at that point. We can always tone the piano down. So that is the hammer assembly. Just sit that there. The second component, which makes up a grand piano action, is the whippen, which is quite a complicated little scenario. So this is the whippen. Hammer assembly, if you can imagine, sits kind of there-ish on the action, and they work together to play the note. And essentially, the main concept with that action is that there is no play, what is called lost motion, between when you touch the piano, the key, so the hammer moves straight away, and also that the hammer sets off right before the string. So just before that hammer travels up and hits the string, it what's called sets off, which it clicks back. And essentially what that does is removes any way really to snap the hammer. Even if you hit it really hard, you could do it, but the way a Yamaha action and a modern action is designed, it limits that. So that's the piano action, and there's a lot of work we do to that part of the process. Every component's taken off and checked. So all of these are taken off, all the hammers are taken off there, everything's checked, and then we go through that process. It's put back in on the keyboard and then slid back into the action, and then once everything is in, then we go through the process of regulation, which is a series of mechanical adjustments in the piano to make sure that the piano mechanically plays correctly, and obviously tuning and servicing the piano once it's all together. And then theoretically out it goes onto the showroom floor, and we sell it and you buy it and we deliver it to your house. Obviously I could go into more depth, but that's a bit of a snapshot in 5 or 6 minutes about what we do. Thanks very much for listening.